Wow, where did all you Mises cultists come from? I put up one video criticizing you for defending child exploitation, and it's like out of the woodwork. Damn, like the video went from 667 views of my own subscribers to 2,247. Wow, you stateless capitalists certainly put your minds together about making a collectivized effort to spam somebody's video. You really deliver. God damn. And you know what I like best about you? You made like 200 comments about things that had nothing to do with the actual content of the video. All you did was go, Mao killed, Stalin killed. That's how you answer your pathetic ideology defending child exploitation.
And this is what we mean, the type of ignorance where they don't understand a damn thing at all to do with the Industrial Revolution time period. Because to start off with, it's very important that you understand that before the Industrial Revolution began, children were very lucky to live past the age of 9 or 10, and adults were very lucky to live past the age of 40. The average life expectancy was very, very poor. The Industrial Revolution had changed a lot. It had drastically improved our, life expectancy as well as our living standards. A lot of these things we really do take for granted. But here's the most important point. First of all, the mothers had no food to cook with. They had no food to cook for their children, so the children had no food on their tables. So what do you think the mothers and children thought when the factories came into fruition? Well, of course, they didn't look at them as if, to say, oh dear, those awful factories. Oh, those awful factories. Oh, we wouldn't want to work in those. Oh, how awful. They were dying of starvation, for Christ's sakes. What opportunity did they have before the Industrial Revolution? They had farms, they had farms, they had more farms, they had farms, they had more farms, they had, let me think about it. They had farms, they had farms, they had farms, and they had farms. Oh, what opportunity. And what's most important about that? Because before the Industrial Revolution began, the people were working from day until night, endless hours from day until night for back-breaking hours. I've shown before on Robert Burns' song and poem, A Man Was Made to Mourn. And of course he wrote that poem because of the fact that, it's man's plight where they're working endless hours and such, for such little pay. It's just the truth of the matter that in those days, even before the Industrial Revolution, they worked for endless hours for such little pay. It's a sad truth, it's a sad fact of the matter. And yes, the early first few decades of the Industrial Revolution were pretty tough. They did work in pretty awful conditions, etc. But what is ignored is the fact that during the Industrial Revolution, things began to change the more technology improved. Because the more technology came into, fruition, the more things that were innovated, the better the living standards became and the more the working hours reduced. This was even happening before all the government regulation. So it wasn't government regulation that reduced the working hours. It was thanks to things such as the technological innovation. I mean, think to yourself for a second. Do you think you could do a project digging up an entire field with these quicker than you can with one of these? Are you having a laugh? Are you honestly having a laugh? You're telling me that a bunch of guys could do a quicker job with these than a guy sitting in one of these? And then we have Henry Hazlitt's book that already refuted the complete and utter bullshit that socialists have hit out with about, oh, the machinery that came to fruition made so many people unemployed. It drove the unemployment levels up. Wrong. It never. In fact, the machines actually created more jobs. But that myth has continued on for the past 150 years. Perhaps even longer than that. But you see, this is the point of the issue. People like him don't understand anything. The most important point that I'm going to make here is the very fact that the children and mothers went to work in the factories because they viewed the factories as salvation. Think about it. They had no food on their tables to eat. The mothers had no food to cook with. They were dying of starvation. They're obviously going to look at the factories as salvation. It's not like they went from working behind computers to working, in factories. That's not how things went. These people look at the time period of the 1700s as if it was something glorious. As if these people lived such wonderful lives during the 1700s. Before the Industrial Revolution, before the factories and the pits. These people are so delusional. They don't even know what life was like back then. They've got no clue, and they take life today for granted. And if it wasn't for the Industrial Revolution, we wouldn't have got here. You see, the laughable thing is the fact that back in that time period, they had nothing. By the end of the Industrial Revolution time period, we had so much opportunity. Just look at things like photography, etc. So many other opportunities and careers opened up and gave us opportunities. You never even had cars back then. Life was just entirely different. And this is the thing that people like that take for granted. Even their living without heating. They never had the type of heating we have today. These people just think as if, the way these socialists look at that time period is kind of like going back, and it's almost like taking what we have today and then going back to the 1700s and kidding on that they had everything that we have today, only they were kind of forced into working in factories. That's how these people look at that time period. It's ridiculous. You can't look at that time period in that manner because they never had the innovation. They never had all the things we have today. If it wasn't for the Industrial Revolution, we wouldn't have had all those things. And one of the most important points is, those people were not forced into working in the factories. Why? Because it is a fact that the factory owners would only employ people who were willing to work for the factories. In other words, they worked for them by choice. If they didn't work for the factories, what did they have? They had nothing there. They would work endless hours on a farm doing nothing. They were dying of starvation. They viewed the factories as salvation. What else did they have? It wasn't a case that they were forced into working for them. They worked for them because it was a way of getting out of the strife that they were in. So that's why they worked in the pits. That's why they worked in the likes of the factories. Because it was a way for them to get out of the mess that they were in, to seek to improve their life. And that they did. Now it's important to understand there wasn't just some one collective group of children and that was it. You had the children who lived by the state. You then had the children who were who worked in the farms, and then you had the children who lived with their mothers. The important point about the children who lived with their mothers is the mothers had the power to prevent their children from working in the factories and pits. So there goes your whole myth about exploitation up in smoke. It fucking blew up in smoke. It went poof.